Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2023 commencement ceremony for the University of Vermont College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Students, you may be seated. For your safety, please take a moment to locate the emergency exits for this arena. We ask that you please keep the aisles clear of people and all objects. In the event of a fire alarm, please remain seated until the announcement providing you with information has been made. If an evacuation of the arena is required, ushers and event staff will be able to direct you to the safest exit. Should an evacuation become necessary, please remain calm, follow the directions of the ushers and the event leaders, and proceed in an orderly manner to the safest and nearest exit near you. Thank you. My name is Dr. Todd J. Pritchett. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences. As the College Marshal for this ceremony, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this special moment in your lives and the lives of our graduates, especially those who are graduating 2023. I now have the honor to introduce Dr. Jane Kolodinsky, Associate Dean of Research for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Professor and Chair of the Department of Community Development and Applied Economics.
Thank you, Todd. Good afternoon, class of 2023. Think about all that you've achieved and what has been a particularly challenging college experience. You've adapted, persevered, and overcome many obstacles. You should be incredibly proud of yourselves. I know we are proud of you. What a tumultuous few years it's been, marked by a global pandemic, deepening political and economic divides, and growing pressures from a changing climate. It's also been a time for diligence, reflection, growth, and action. Take today, maybe a few more days, to enjoy your accomplishments, but I know your drive won't let you rest for too long. As Dr. Sunarthaman Paramchanthanathan shared his mnemonic Vermont, so you never forget Vermont, victory, excellence, research, in the moment, opportunity, networking, and transformation, take this mnemonic from our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Aim high, live up to your own expectations, and seize every opportunity. It's what we continue to do in our life journey that matters. I've been at UVM for a very long time, and you, the students, never cease to amaze me. You are committed to building a more sustainable, resilient, kind, and inclusive world. The world needs graduates like you, emerging leaders who have a shared commitment to building a better world using basic and applied, natural and life sciences, social sciences, creative applications, and public policy. We say the only constant in life is change. When you arrived at UVM, you may have felt eager, anxious, afraid, and/or confident. These are all some of the emotions of change. As you leave UVM, you may feel the same. These feelings, though, set you up to discover, grow, learn, and apply what you know. We hope that you've been challenged and inspired during your time in CALS. You've juggled academics with paid employment, volunteering, extracurriculars, research, and so much more. I'd like to take just a moment to recognize just how much you've achieved. For all of you who have participated in research with a faculty member or community partner, please stand. For all of you can stay standing. For all of you who have participated in an internship, service learning experience, paid employment, or international experience, please stand. And for all of you who've participated in extracurriculars such as a student club, athletics, intramural sports, and beyond, please stand. You have done all these things and so much more. You can now sit down. Congratulations, Catamounts. It is now my pleasure to introduce our ceremony speaker, Christoph Grenna. Christoph is a graduate of the CALS class of 2012. He holds a BS in Plant and Soil Science with a focus on ecological agriculture. During his time at UVM, he became passionate about how agriculture can be incorporated into the densely built urban environment. This led him to co-found Uptop Acres, a Washington, D.C.-based firm that designs, builds, and maintains rooftop, soil-based farms and gardens. He's been able to apply the foundation laid during his time in CALS to push the boundaries of where and how food can be grown. His work has led to recognition as a Halcyon Fellow and a Forbes 30 Under 30 for social entrepreneurship. Please join me in welcoming Christoph Grenna.
Thank you, Dean Kolodinsky, other faculty, graduates, family, friends, for welcoming me back to a place that has played such a foundational role in my life. It feels like yesterday I was sitting in your seats. It's an absolute honor to be invited to speak with you, and if I'm being completely honest, it's a little ironic, given the fact that days before my own graduation in 2012, I was reading a letter from the Dean of Students who was informing me that I wouldn't be allowed to walk. You see, my friend Nate, who is actually in attendance today, Nate and I made the questionable decision to disembark early from our senior week boat cruise through the second floor window on the Spirit of the Ethan Allen and into the cold spring waters of Lake Champlain below. So this is certainly a full circle moment for me here. Before I get into the meat of this speech, I wanted to take a moment to congratulate all of you graduates on getting here. You've done a really, really, really big thing. It takes hard work and perseverance to graduate. Some of you have been working part-time jobs, as leaders in clubs, training as athletes, all while being full-time students. I firmly believe that it's essential to celebrate these momentous life moments. So take a second, give yourself and the people sitting next to you a huge round of applause because you deserve it. I also believe that it's important to reflect on the people in your lives that have helped you to get here today. Your families, loved ones, and friends who sacrificed in ways known and unknown to you for you to have the opportunity to be here today. Your graduation is the result of countless actions taken by these folks over decades, culminating in this celebration today. There are many more chapters still to be written, but this is a momentous one. So congratulations to all of you that have been in the wings supporting the graduates. Give yourself a round of applause. What's so special to me about UVM is the incredibly strong sense of community and the way that it benefits us in the real world. When I was thinking about what I wanted to focus on today, this idea of community and cooperation kept popping back up into my head. It's what I remember most from my time in Burlington and continues to be something that's at the top of my mind in the present day. The support network that you can build on this college campus is truly remarkable. It allows you to spread your wings, take risks, and pull at all the threads of so many unique experiences. I think about the stranger that might sit next to you in class, who offers up their notes to you so you can skip it to finish up a paper on a deadline, get in some extra training at the gym, or pick up an extra shift at work. Or that friend of a friend of a friend offering to give you a ride to Jay or Stowe when you don't have access to a car in exchange for a little bit of gas money. Or the plentiful resources made available by the Outing Club, allowing you to experience the joy and the immense beauty that Vermont has to offer. Or even the president of the student government, whom you've never met, writing a letter to the Dean of Students on your behalf, imploring them to let you walk at graduation after your polar plunge. I was allowed to walk, for the record. These things seem like second nature on campus, but they can be a lot harder to come by in everyday life. During my junior year, I was fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to be a part of the UVM Semester Abroad program in Oaxaca, Mexico, where I was introduced firsthand to the wonders of what a strong, cooperative, and multi-generational community can look like and how they enhance the lives of everyone around them. My friend Jake and I were lucky enough to be placed in a homestay with 2 retired teachers. Their son, daughter-in-law, grandchildren, and many other relatives and friends lived in the same neighborhood. Everyone worked collectively to support the family and larger community, and as a result, no one was left behind. I experienced similar things during visits to cooperative weaving and farming communities in Oaxaca, or in the Central Valley of Oaxaca. These experiences reframed my entire worldview, exposed me to fundamental truths about what a life can and should look like, and altered the trajectory of my life. I returned to Burlington for my senior year with a desire to learn all I could about different styles of cooperative organization and start trying to build those same strong community networks. I had the opportunity to witness the powerful work being done at places like the Intervale, the Catamount Farm, and countless other community-centered businesses here in the state. The most lasting impact of my time here at UVM was a galactic expansion of my understanding of the immense potential of community, cooperation, and self-governance to improve our society. Leaving UVM and the Vermont community to return home to Washington, D.C. was a shock to the system. Those support networks were nowhere near as strong, and I was shoved into the churn of adulthood in one of the centers of modern American capitalism, and it stood in stark contrast to my experiences of the previous 4 years. Finding my footing was overwhelming and isolating. Right after graduation, armed with a degree from CALS, I threw myself into the DC urban agriculture scene. I was working a bunch of different jobs at a market garden outside of the city, at an educational garden downtown, and delivering produce to elementary schools for a local nonprofit. All the while, I was scheming on how I could start my own venture. Ever since taking an urban agriculture class my junior year, I had become fascinated by the possibility of growing food on the roofs of buildings. Armed with the naivete of 3 23-year-olds, my partners and I decided to start working on a business doing just that. It was during those first few years that I personally experienced the monumental power of community and cooperation. We would never have gotten it off the ground if it wasn't for the support of our friends, our family, the greater DC agriculture community, a random celebrity chef, local city council staffers, and complete strangers. We've since been able to grow that business to cover over 25 rooftops and over 4 acres of growing space. We try to filter every decision that we make through the lens of community benefit and resilience. This has led us to structure our business model in a way that allows us to distribute half of the food we grow to local organizations working to fight food insecurity and provide food-related workforce development in marginalized communities around the DC area. We're also working to transition into a worker-owned cooperative business model in an effort to further strengthen our organization for the long haul. We truly believe in helping to leave the door open behind us, and early on we became deeply involved in a push to pass local legislation creating a citywide office of urban agriculture. Because DC is not a state and lacks congressional representation, we are without an extension or a farm service agency office, leaving the urban ag community unable to access much of the available resources that exist. The legislation that we were working on ended up passing, and that office has helped to distribute over $1 million of community agriculture grants, and also led the charge to pass more legislation in support of community-focused agriculture projects in the city. So we've had a lot of success, but at times it's been quite frustrating and really confusing to try and build a business like Uptop Acres, in the midst of the hyper-capitalist nexus of business, commercial real estate, and government that exists in DC. Capitalism relies on the disruption and the subversion of community cooperation, and these are the exact things that we're trying to strengthen. Our prevailing economic system puts a low value on sharing, be it things, transportation, time, ideas, spaces, or experiences. Policy decisions help to further entrench this separation from others. The defunding of public spaces like libraries, rec centers, and parks, the gutting of public transportation and school budgets, and an unwillingness to build more housing. This singular profit at all costs economic system has brought about unmitigated climate change, the breakdown of our natural systems, the loneliness epidemic, and the hollowing out of our urban, rural, and indigenous communities. Our generations and those to follow are going to bear the worst of these crises. And having spent my whole life in DC, I can assure you that the majority of our current elected leadership is wholly unprepared or uninterested in confronting and solving these challenges, excluding, of course, one former mayor of Burlington. Strong, we can give Bernie some claps if we want. Strong, multi-generational communities and collective ownership. These are the things that offer us the best hope of weathering the tumultuous and uncertain future. The best piece of advice that I can think to give you today is to encourage you, as you begin your next chapter post-UVM, to actively seek out and build that community. It will enhance your life and your future in every way possible. So that seems like a big task. How do you go about doing this? You can start small. Use your passions and your talents to guide you. Think of it like joining an on-campus organization. Are you 22 and really interested in maximizing your social life at the moment? Get some friends together and throw parties that raise money for local organizations. Do you speak multiple languages? Find a community group that offers free ESL classes and volunteer time. Do you enjoy biking like I do? Find a group that advocates for trails and for safe streets. Wherever you move next, make it a point to seek out and introduce yourself to your neighbors. Do you like to cook? Bring them a meal. Are you a natural event planner? Help organize a block party. Join a neighborhood or a faith group that helps to facilitate gatherings. Volunteer at a local food aid organization. Join a youth mentorship program. Volunteer to give your elderly neighbors rides to do their errands. Every small action helps to weave another layer of thread into your community, strengthening it in the process. Build these relationships, and they will help nurture you. It's commonly known as paying it forward. I like to view it as a community investment that will help support you in the future. Your old car breaks down, but can't afford to get another one because the new and used car market is through the roof. With a strong community, you may be able to work out an arrangement that saves you from ever needing a new one at all. Centering community in your life will lead you to the causes that you care about, and you will inevitably find yourself organizing with others to build a better world around you. I've found amazing friendships, housing, and job opportunities by relying on these relationships, which have been built through simply showing up. It's also been scientifically proven that participating in community building increases your happiness, lessens loneliness, and improves your overall health. I'm confident that each and every one of you here today are up for this task. I know this because you've been practicing this radical act of community building and cooperation for the last 4 years here at UVM. Use your experiences here as a guide to help you build a life and world that is vibrant, just, and expansive. Join arms with others to help lift up the people around you, and they will in turn do the same for you. Thank you so much for allowing me to share in this moment with you, and congratulations to the class of 2023.
Thank you, Christoph. I had the opportunity to read Christoph's speech earlier today as I was preparing, and I really hope the Dean's Office will, 1, post that to their website, and 2, require it of all incoming students for our college next year, because if students did half as much as an undergrad as you've done, we'd have even a better college than we do today. The other thing I'd like to say to the graduates is, now you know why you had to take Cal's 1, right? Talk about a good presentation and speaker, so we give you those skills. So Christoph, you're not only welcome back to UVM, you along with the graduates here today will always be a member of our College of Ag and Life Sciences family. At this time, I would like to ask Associate Dean of Research, Dr. Jane Kolodinsky, forward to present for the presentation of Emeriti Citations.
David S. Barrington, Professor of Plant Biology and Director of the Pringle Herbarium. Dr. Barrington has served as Director of the Pringle Herbarium at UVM for 49 years, Faculty in Plant Biology for 45 years, and Plant Biology Chair for 24 years. His fern systemics research advanced our understanding of fern biogeography, showing how hybridization and polyploidy led to the diversity of ferns currently alive on the planet. He cultivated a thriving community of students in his research program, having mentored more than 20 graduate students and as many undergraduate researchers. His dozens of scientific publications were often co-authored by students as well as collaborators around the world. Dr. Barrington was also an award-winning educator whose courses on fern systematics and tropical plant diversity were sought after by students. He was honored by a colloquium in his name at the Botany 2019 conference and by the American Fern Journal in 2020, celebrating David Barrington's contributions to fern and lycophyte research. Thank you for your service and dedication to UVM. Cynthia Beliveau, Research Faculty in Nutrition and Food Sciences, Emerita, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Cynthia isn't here, but I'll read her citation anyway. Dr. Cynthia Beliveau, you are a lifelong member of the Catamount community. You received your bachelor's degree in education and your doctoral degree in educational leadership and policy studies at UVM. A brief eastward journey led you to the University of Maine, where you received your Master in Public Administration. As research faculty in the Nutrition and Food Sciences Department, you collaborated closely with faculty colleagues. You played a crucial role in building food systems as an area of excellence at this university, including helping to develop the Food Systems Spire of Excellence, implementing and overseeing the Food Systems Summit, and collaborating with faculty across the university and extension to build allied courses and programs, including the Food Systems Leadership Institute and the Farmer Training Program. We are so grateful for your service. Paul Kinstedt, Professor of Nutrition and Food Sciences, Emerita, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Dr. Paul S. Kinstedt, after receiving your bachelor's in dairy science and master's degrees in animal sciences from the University of Vermont and your PhD in food technology from Cornell University, you left upstate New York and returned to the working landscape of Vermont. Initially hired in 1986, during your 37 years at UVM, you contributed with grace to all aspects of the mission of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. You are an internationally renowned scientist and expert in dairy science. The depth and breadth of your scholarly interests are revealed in your 100 peer-reviewed articles in numerous scholarly journals, your many book chapters, and your notable books on the history and practice of cheese and cheesemaking. In 2022, you received the Babcock Award for exemplary service in educating and training in the United States dairy industry, a fitting honor given your dedicated collaborations in research, teaching, and outreach for over 3 decades. We are so grateful for your service. Dr. Christopher Kaliba, Professor of Community Development and Applied Economics, and a colleague of mine, and he was unable to be here today, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Dr. Christopher Kaliba, you have served the UVM community for 34 years as Director of the Public Administration Master's Program, co-creator of the Office of Community University Partnerships, that's CELO, leader in the development of the Sustainable Development Economics Policy and Governance PhD, that's SDPEGS, and inaugural director of the Office of Outreach and Engagement. As a scholar of public administration, you authored over 70 publications and a textbook. You were awarded a Fulbright Scholar in Sri Lanka and advanced methodology in participatory modeling in the domains of water quality, flood hazard mitigation, food systems governance, and smart grid technology. You were team science leader in Vermont EPSCoR. You've held major service positions in the Network of Schools of Public Affairs and Administration, the American Society of Public Administration, and the National Academy of Public Administration's Social Equity Leadership Conference. Thank you for your long career of service to CDAE, UVM, and beyond. Catherine Paris, Senior Lecturer of Plant Biology, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Dr. Paris has influenced generations of students at the University of Vermont, having taught for over 30 years, the last 14 as senior lecturer. At home teaching in the classroom and in the field, from the introductory to the graduate level, she received the Joseph E. Kerrigan Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching, reflecting a deep commitment to education that challenges and engages students. Dr. Paris's passion for curriculum led to her service on the CAL's Core Curriculum Committee, the Self-Design Majors Committee, and the CAL's Curriculum Committee, where she served for 12 years, half of those as chair or co-chair. She also took a prominent role in university affairs, serving on the Provost Academic Planning Council and in multiple roles in the Faculty Senate, including chair of the Curricular Affairs Committee, member of the Executive Council, and finally, as president of the UVM Faculty Senate. Thank you for your service to UVM. Timothy D. Perkins, Research Professor of Plant Biology and Director of the Proctor Maple Research Center. Tim was unable to be with us today. Dr. Perkins has been conducting maple research at the University of Vermont since 1991 and served as the director of the Proctor Maple Research Center since 1996. His research, leadership, and innovation have positioned the University of Vermont at the forefront of maple science, examining the ecophysiology of maple and other forest trees in response to pollution, climate change, and human activity. He has built connections throughout the maple industry, setting high standards for syrup production and innovating solutions that have led to 12 patents. The maple community has recognized his lifetime of service with numerous awards, including the President's Award from the International Maple Syrup Institute, induction into the International Maple Hall of Fame, and a life membership in the North American Maple Syrup Council. Ooh, I want that one. The University of Vermont and the Plant Biology Department gratefully recognize the substantial contributions of Dr. Perkins' extraordinarily productive and impactful career. Thank you for your service.
I'd like to once again thank my colleagues who are retiring this year. We are losing an incredible amount of institutional memory, and I've had a number of them as my teachers. And I won't tell you the story about Dr. Barrington teaching me about the birds and bees in Bio 1, but he did. On behalf of the students, staff, faculty, and the entire UVM community, I would like to invite Dr. Kolodinsky to come forward for a presentation of a posthumous degree to a very special family.
Now, on behalf of our CALS family, the University of Vermont, and the greater Burlington community, I have the privilege of acknowledging a very special student and member of the class of 2023. Kayla Renee Noonan was taken away from us unexpectedly and tragically last summer as a result of domestic violence. We stand together today to celebrate the beautiful person she was, her contributions to her community, and for her love of learning, growing, and challenging herself every day to achieve her goals. A community entrepreneurship major and a sociology minor, Kayla is remembered by her instructors and friends as someone with a beautiful smile, a sense of humor, and a heart of gold. She was driven to reach her goals, which included earning her degree and working in business. She was dedicated to school, but also managed a job at the Chase Bank in Burlington, where she planned to pursue a career in finance after graduation. She walked with power and confidence and was preparing to forge her own path in life. Kayla was proud to be a Catamount and to follow in the footsteps of many of her family members, including her great-grandparents and siblings. Her family shares a poem with us on this commencement day, a message to Kayla and to those who knew her best, loved her, and will forever hold her in their hearts. Our special Kayla, a limb has fallen from the family tree that says, "Grieve not for me." Remember the best times, the laughter, the song, the good life I loved when I was strong. Kayla is represented here today by so many of her family members and friends. We extend our hearts to all of you. A limb has fallen from our tree as well, but the contributions Kayla made here will be forever rooted in the UVM community. Please join me in acknowledging and celebrating her life as I invite the family to accept the diploma for a Bachelor of Science degree to Kayla Renee Noonan.
We now turn our attention to the central reason that we are here today. Our class of 2023 graduates are about to be presented with their diplomas. The presentation of diplomas will be alphabetically by department, beginning with those majoring in the Department of Animal and Veterinary Sciences. For the awarding of diplomas, students will come forth alphabetically within their department and will receive congratulations from the chair of their department, the program director, or department representative, as well as our dean. Graduates, as you come forward to receive your diploma, please be cautious when entering and exiting the stage. Dr. Fengji Zhao, Professor and Chair of the Department of Animal and Veterinary Sciences, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in animal sciences.
Wait. Rowan Adrian. Artioli. Jillian Artioli. Jackie Barbieri. Alexandria Lee Bartlett. Andrea G. Bateman. Sacred's card. Oh, actually, sorry, I need to keep the cards, don't I? Sorry. Kendra Bevan. Erica G. Bergendahl. Adele Rose Biasini. I'll keep this. Haley Black. Bladen. Avery Logan Bladen. Riley M. Blanchfield. Marcelit E. Buchheit. Okay. Kelly Ann Burke. Michael Anthony Camano. Abigail Bridget Carroll. Gabrielle M. Kluens. Erica Sean Conley. Ivana Alexis Catino. Malin Deutsch. Farron Dick. Grace Victoria Donovan. Emilia R. Dumas. Natalie Rachel Erstad, cum laude. Cassandra N. Foley. Ashley Francisco. Emily Nicole Frost. Guerreri. Emily Elizabeth Guerreri. Catherine Emery Potter Glenn. Maximilian Ari Goldfarb, cum laude. Julia M. Gorenstein. Evan Thomas Griffin. Charisma Joan Hammond. Heidi Health. Melanie Hoffman. Tria Yushur Shea Lewis. Camilla P. Jaruga. Parker E. Jewell. Riza Kadriai. Catherine Kapika. Shauna Ashlyn Kelly, magna cum laude. Clemitis. Hannah Morgan Clemitis, magna cum laude. Megna Kamichik. Alyssa. Alyssa Marie LaPietra. Amelia Ann Lucas. Emily P. McKay. Mary Elena Macri. Malbuff. Sarah H. Malbuff. Patrick J. March. Do I need to slow down? Okay. Keegan Kathleen Marshy. Liliana H. McHugh. Alessandra Michaelides. Grace Roderick Moulton. Joshua Aaron Myers. Denise N. Neal. Leah Mary Nemitz. Narodka. Alexis Ann Narodka. Brenna Nicole Novakoski. Natalie Marie O'Brien. Riley Amelia Ox. Elizabeth Parker. Leah Brianna Petty. Anna Pederossi. Makara Kellen Renz. Cora Richardson. Lauren Marie Riley. Carrie Elizabeth Ring. Rubel. Joshua Cole Rubel. Lillian Grace Schnur. Amalia R. Silverblatt. Simas. Nicole Lee Simas. Allison M. Simmons. Hang on one second. Hannah Lee Scarry. Molly Sita Spato. Standoven. Winston Ann Hogan Standoven. Eleanor Shaughnessy Stark. Avery Taylor Sutton. Toglia. Sophia Toglia, cum laude. Isabel Toomey. Brianna M. Vander Way. Skylar Ward. Grace N. Washburn. Elise K. Wellman. Claire Richardson West. Witham? Brandon James Witham. Zambrano. Mark Zambrano. Can we turn on the central mic for a second?
Dr. Sylvie Dubly, professor in microbiology and molecular genetics and the College of Medicine, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in biochemistry.
Here. Grace Elizabeth Gear. Joshua McEwen Overton. Nicole Savoy. William Joseph Simard, cum laude. Sophie Grace Unger, magna cum laude.
Dr. Jean Harris, professor and chair of the Department of Plant Biology, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in biological science.
Rachel Ash. Noah Brian Beckage. Daniel P. Bernier. Justin Thomas Couder. Hannah Cole Fallon. Kayla Flanagan. Hang on a second. Jessica Eileen Gagne, summa cum laude. Anne Lori Gilland, magna cum laude. Elizabeth Ann Harrington. Tennyson. Emma Tennyson Hendra. Lila Claire Hunt. Anne Elizabeth Lamson. Congrats. Caitlin Elizabeth Marcoux, cum laude. Congrats. Laurel J. Marshy. Colin McKay. Congrats. Aiden Mays McHugh. Emma L. Ovett. Andrea Rose Prince. Presenting the next diploma is Dr. Jennifer Prue, Senior Lecturer in the College of Education and Social Services and mom to our next graduate. Zoe M. Prue. Evan Simons.
Dr. David Connor, professor in the Department of Community Development and Applied Economics, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in community entrepreneurship, community-centered design, community and international development, and public communication.
Daniela Elizabeth Agan. Magali Itzel Stowell Alaman. Turner A. Allen. Samantha Elizabeth Oliva. Emma Anhalt. Emma Suzanne Ardizzoni. Chloe Sage Arias. Olivia Jane Adelot. Montana Bird Bailey, magna cum laude. Savino? Baril? Savino A. Baril. Jennifer Kate Benatti, magna cum laude. Amelia Peel Berlandi. Sadie Wolf Block. Jackson Davis Bond. Bono? Bella Grace Bono. Isabel Fiona Charlotte Brennan. Brusa. Libby S. Brusa. Abigail Grace Carroll. Cedarholm? Yeah. Connor Cedarholm. Seth Michael Chestnut. Sosowski. Brendan Sosowski. Grace Ann Colbeth. Helena Marie Curtin. Isabel Juliet Curtin. Zamora Cleopatra Da Vinci. Dodge de Camp. Oh. Hayden Grace Dodge de Camp. Aaron David Deloney. Isabella Claire Donahue. Benjamin Boots Downing. Robin Dylan Duncan. Mimi Duong. Dvorak. Sylvie Amali Dvorak. Nicole Michelle Eaton. Katerina Edelman. Ashley Elizabeth Felisberto. Joseph Peter Trevejo Fernandez. Ava Isabel Foyer. Krista Elizabeth Fillion, cum laude. Leo Paul Fobert. Holly Davenport Foster, magna cum laude. Evan John Fredericks. Ethan Samuel Fry. We good? Okay. 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 Dashel M. Fukushima. Samuel Thomas Gerdeman. Cameron Omar Gibson. Gidlow? Gavin Samuel Gidlow. Goldstein? Harrison M. Goldstein. Gabriella Griffin Leon. Elizabeth Lucy Grimm. Afia Giabor. Kyle James Halpern. Alexander Moore Ham. Anna Victoria Hauser. Alexandra H. Heinrich. Samuel Heinrichs. Chloe Rose Hickman. Bryce A. Hurd. Jacqueline Ann Inman. Bridget Catherine Carl. Adi Goldstein. Adi Goldstein Conforti. Sam Raymond Koskinen, magna cum laude. Mary Renard Kieser. Yep. Peyton Claire Curley. Samantha Breyer Lacey. Julia Mariscal Lanstoret Hernandez. Wasea Jane Lawton. Camilla Maria Laterre. Okay. Yep. Hang on one second. Good. Natalie Pino Licciardi. Caleb Frederick Schrager Loving. Maggio. Luke S. Maggio. Laura Ann Marr. Rowan Mahoney. Greta Mastrocola. Ashley Elizabeth Maines. Anna Milai. Malone. Francis P. Malone III. Madeline Margaret Moran. Joanna Ellis Mullen. Patrick Murphy Putnam. Cameron Nicholas Murray. Eileen Gwen Needham. Brooke Frances Noble. Alina? Natalie Alina Noble. Timothy James Norton. Nicholas C. Perugini. Ethan Fan. Evelyn A. Prim, magna cum laude. Ashley Morgan Reeves. Matthew Scott Richardson. Rochelot. Claire A. Rochelot. Kayla Isabella Rosen. Salort. Catherine Schuyler Salort. Eamon Willem Jong Key Sales. Emma R. Schacht. Eleanor Grace Scott. Lucas Shane. Addie Shepard. Amarita Jade Shore, cum laude. Emma Elizabeth Sullivan. Taggart. Catherine Lee Taggart. Margaret M. Talty. Virginia Anderson Treese, cum laude. Lauren Triarci. James Anthony Vischer. Natalie Wydick. Julian Puma Diamond Wise. Avery Annette Weishart. Tyler Jackson Woolston. Tian Jia. I keep this. Keep going. Annika Zimmerman. Svak. Alessandra Zvak Deval.
Dr. Jean Harris, Professor and Chair of the Department of Plant Biology, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in environmental sciences.
Julia Bamford. Abby S. Beckman. Berzola. Courtney Claire Berzola. Mara J. Decker. Althea Deshane. Grace Demick. Thomas Lawson Early. Benjamin Avery Fisher. Isabel Julia Hammond. Brandon Scott Keddick. Carolyn Grace Martin. Kevin Vincent McDermott. Perugini. Jack Perugini. Meghna Thundian Perumbal Satish. Reina Tosteler.
Dr. David Barrington, Chair of the Department of Plant and Soil Science, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in environmental studies.
Robert Connolly Burmeister. Emma Forrest Cripps. DiGiacomo. Grace Ann DiGiacomo, summa cum laude. Jonah Ram Freeman. Emery V. Green, cum laude. Phoebe Rachel Balaban Grouper, magna cum laude. Carly Elizabeth Infante. Diana Elizabeth Mincola. Paige Montgomery. Abigail Maria Slajan. Carolyn Elizabeth Fortschelt Wolf.
Dr. David Connor, Professor in the Department of Community Development and Applied Economics, will present the diplomas to graduates majoring in food systems.
Lillian Bartlett. Harrison James Rainier Betts. Lily Carr. Lydia Kate Duncan. Charles T. Egan. Greta Jane Gannon. Jill R. Greenfield. Julie Ruth Grossman. Olivia Margaret Hall. Emmett Chateau Hazel. Melissa Hirschhorn. Maeve McFadden Keck. Talia Knopf. Okay, thank you. Josephine Carmela Keck, cum laude. Lila Vivian Krugman. Levy? Levy. Sophie Levy. Oh, I missed. Maurice? Maris Elise Linder. Shauna Margaret McGraw. Charles D. Metcalf. Catherine Margaret Morrissey, magna cum laude. Sydney Musmichi. Molly Nicole O'Brien. Procanic? Jamie Lynn Procanic. Sophia May Sherbin. Madison Lynn Simons. Bryce Anderson Williams.
Dr. Sylvie Dublee, professor in the Department of Microbiology and Molecular Genetics and the College of Medicine, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in microbiology and molecular genetics.
Jordan Alexandra Allen Brandon. Lars Eric Andrews. Hannah Maria Balda. Abigail Brum. Emma Jane Bryant. Buffenbarger? Haley Buffenbarger. Amanda Lee Charlwood. Henry Cretall. Andrew J. Crompton, magna cum laude. Abigail Wright Densmore. Forgione. Michaela Grace Forgione, cum laude. Janella. Olivia Jean Ling Janella. Giles. Julia M. Giles. Christina D. Harmon. Matthew David Heilbronn. Callie? Callie Samantha Heron, magna cum laude. Molly Broderick Hoppa. Madison Houston. Abigail Hurd. William P. Keegan. Georgia A. Kinahan. Hannah Christine Kubinski, summa cum laude. Connolly Culp. Owen Edward Connolly Culp. Labuschagne. Bianca L. Labuschagne. Rigrod. Isabel Rose Lasky Rigrod. Samuel H. Lerner. Livia Marchese, cum laude. Mary Celeste McClellan. Eric Munn. Juliana Polonsky. Stacia Corinne Richard. Nicholas E. Robinson. Olivia Beatrice Ruggiero. Remy Aloysius Savard, summa cum laude. Aidan Steenbergen. Hannah R. Stone. Marlena Tilsley. Guillermo Enrique Whitney. Nabiha Yusuf.
Dr. Amy Trubeck, Professor and Chair of the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in Nutrition and Food Sciences, as well as those majoring in Dietetics, Nutrition, and Food Sciences.
Ashley Lynn Angle. Shara? Shara Elizabeth Barton. Emily Ann Crespo. Hannah Decker. Sarah Dingwell. Zoe Louise Dumais, magna cum laude. William Doran Figueroa. Michaela Ann Fleming. Kirsten Dagny Forrester. Natalie Nicole Gadowski. Anna Jane Gwynn. Luke A. Hansen. Laurel Houle, cum laude. Catherine Klein. Hannah Kuhn. Aurora Barkett Maldonado. Hey, wait. Susanna Montgomery. Taylor Nguyen. Liam Rittenberg. Chloe Rosenthal Kay. Camille Schmidt. Clara Lindsay Small. Greta Mary Smith.
Dr. Jean Harris, Professor and Chair of the Department of Plant Biology, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in plant biology.
Krista Sybil Lessing. Congrats. Olivia A. Rist. Anwin R. Roberts, cum laude. Madison G. Smith.
Dr. David Barrington, Professor and Chair of the Department of Plant and Soil Science, will present diplomas to graduates majoring in agroecology and landscape design, ecological agriculture, and sustainable landscape horticulture.
Paul C. Beatty. David Brown. Gregory E. Burt. Abigail Lynn Chastain. Eddie. Sarah Eileen Eddy. Timothy R. Hoops. Frida Ruth Safran Khan. Sydney Miller. Andrew D. Milton. Samantha C. Parker. Alyssa Marie Passini. Ashley Nicole Pearson. Caitlin M. Roth. Adalbertus? Adalbertus Spahn. Olivia May Tibbetts. Ayana? Ayana Jade Vargo.
Before we bring these proceedings to an end, Associate Dean of Research, Dr. Jane Kolodinsky, has a few closing remarks. Dean Kolodinsky.
Graduates of the class of 2023, today you join more than 13,000 CALS alumni throughout Vermont and around the world who are passionate about their work and changing their communities for the better. We can't wait to see what you'll do next, and please keep in touch with each other and your mentors. We've been privileged to have each and every one of you as a member of our college. Remember, you'll always be a part of this big, great CALS family, and will always be at home in the Green Mountain State. Aim high, live up to your own expectations, and seize every opportunity. Congratulations.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have helped to make this graduation exercise a success. I'd like to recognize our college commencement marshals, Dr. Janet Murray and Dr. Lizzie Pope. Dr. Don Stratton, who had the unenviable task of introducing each and every name, but he did it perfectly. And our Associate Dean, Kate Finley Woodruff, who put on about 2 miles walking back and forth there. In The Wizard of Oz, there's a scene in which the curtain is pulled back to show what's actually going on behind the scenes. I'd like to take this opportunity to pull back the curtain to my left and to identify the wonderful individuals from the Dean's office who have worked behind the scenes to make today run so smoothly. Please step forward to be recognized. Kaylee Boughton. Joanna Cummings. Carrie Daigle. Jacqueline Druin. Tina Haskins. And Emma Lane. Thank you all so very much. There's one person in the Dean's office who's not been with you, who's been with you, graduates, the whole time in CALS, and who personally checked, rechecked, and then rechecked once more to make sure you had met all the requirements and were ready to receive your diploma today. A special thank you to Whitney Northrup. Is she hiding? Thank you. As we prepare to leave, I would like to ask that the aisles from the platform to the back of the room stay clear, and we will exit through the doors right over here on the left-hand side, so those will need to be clear. I would also ask that each guest remain in place until the members of the platform party and the graduates have exited. Graduates, you will follow the platform party out of the ceremony into the lobby of the Patrick Gym, where you can meet up once again with your family and friends for pictures. Class of 2023, on behalf of the faculty and staff of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you for sharing your lives with us over these past few years. You've challenged us to be current with our subject matter, to identify new and engaging means of imparting knowledge, and most importantly, you have afforded us all the opportunity to grow as individuals. Once again, thank you, Class of 2023. All right, it's a big moment, graduates. If you have not already done so, you may move your tassel to the left side of your cap. This brings us to the end of these proceedings. I want to thank you all again for being here to honor our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Class of 2023 graduates. This ceremony is now completed.